have Andrew Higgins, a very distinguished speaker who recently presented at the Inter-American Conference in Puerto Rico. He's going to now talk to us about another underlying theme of our visit to Northland, and that is access and equity. Thanks, Andrew.
The social justice agenda has been very dominant in Western society over the last 50 years. To me, it seems to consist of 6 parts, of which we generally talk only about the first 3. Access, equity, and participation are the 3 key elements of the social justice agenda. There are 3 other elements: authority, accountability, and responsibility. These are very rarely discussed. Let me take the first one. Access. Many communities don't have ready access to education because of distance, or because it's culturally not appropriate or seem to be not as relevant for them. So people either do not participate much in the education because they don't have the access to it. We have the notion of participation. Which groups in society participate in education? Why do they participate, and what are the benefits to them? And how do we encourage those not presently participating to do so? That might be for an economic argument. For example, women not participating in education. Having those participate would mean that they would become qualified and therefore more valuable economic units, if you wanted to speak like that. And then we have the business of equity. How do we treat all of the people in our society with equity and with justice? An interesting proposition in respect of people whose language and whose culture is different from that of the mainstream. So they're the 3 key elements of access, equity, and participation. And what has that to do with open e-learning and the new communication technologies? When, where, and how is it appropriate for us to work with people to improve their access? This can be done through the technologies as such. In other words, if the technological basis is not there, the access is difficult to achieve. Once it is there, then we have the challenge of bringing people into the educational sphere. Now, we might ask ourselves why we're going to do that. I'll say something about that in a minute. How do we raise the participation rates of certain underrepresented groups using technology? How do we make it culturally and socially appropriate? And last of all, are we sure that we're treating those folk equitably throughout the community, given that they're all equal taxpayers? One of the driving forces for all of these matters isn't necessarily learning for itself. In many instances, there's an economic driver. The economic driver is, can I get my money back? Bearing in mind that many people have to borrow money to access it and participate in education. In order to get their money back, they need to get a certificate which demonstrates that they have content knowledge, are skilled and competent at something. That makes them more employable, i.e. they are better economic units in the society. Other folk take it as learning for its own sake. If that is so, should there be a charge attached to it? What sort of charge should be attached to it, given that the rewards for it in an economic sense are not often very evident? These are challenges that we all face, and different countries are making different decisions about how to charge for and then reward persons who take part in education beyond the compulsory years.
Talk this from the point of view of cultural and ethical considerations within an online environment. Andrew.
Thank you again for the opportunity to speak with you. In one of my last very brief snippets, I spoke of access, equity and participation. I spoke also of authority, responsibility and accountability. People immediately respond with the idea that these things are bureaucratic. Within the concept of cultural and ethical behaviour, if a government is required by its own community, i.e. the electorate, to raise money by way of taxes for public expenditure for public purposes. It has to be accountable. It has to be spent for the purpose for which it was raised, and people have to be able to see it. In order for this to happen, individuals within government or elsewhere related to government, perhaps in some non-government bodies, have to be responsible for carrying out the policies of the government, which are the expressions of the people in democracies. Further, this means that certain people have to have authority to do things because they have to make decisions. They will be held accountable for the outcome of those decisions. Now, as a person who formerly served as a bureaucrat, I would ask myself in a cultural and ethical context, is what we're doing fair? Is this fair and reasonable? Does the public expect it, and does our community think that this is what they want? Looking at it from another perspective, is what we're doing creating harm or not creating harm? If it is going to create harm, to what extent can this be mitigated? If it's not creating harm, how is it beneficial and to whom is it beneficial? Those decisions are often determined in a sense, and I mean determined in a loose sense there, that the decisions which are made have to be in concordance with the community norms, i.e. the currently interpreted law of the particular country or place in which the decisions are being made, and from whose coffers the money is being spent. So let us look at that in the context of networked environments. Now, it's true that these are international, and very frequently, other than in some respects, there is no international law about these things. So what are we left with? Is it fair? Does it do no harm? Is it concordant with the community of interest of the community in which we work? i.e., is it an expression of the community norms within our networked environments? And lastly, to protect ourselves, is it in accordance with the interpretation, as we best understand it, of the laws of the countries in which we work? All these sound, as I said before, terribly bureaucratic, but they're there for a reason, particularly if it involves the expenditure of public money, and that is to demonstrate to those who gave the money that what we're doing is reasonable, fair and beneficial. In Western society, we live within a paradigm, and I'm thinking of Thomas Kuhn's notion of the structure of scientific revolution, when he talks about paradigms. And these are not small things, these are very, very large things that sometimes we're so embedded in that we can't see that they exist. And one of the paradigms in respect of learning and teaching is the Western paradigm of what it means to receive education. It arises from Aristotle. There's Socrates, as Aristotle described him, in the grove at Academe, teaching students of similar age and similar interest in the presence of some resources. Might have been a sandbox. That was copied through into the Roman systems, into the monasteries, into the early universities, and into the schools. It's the coexistence in time and space of a teacher, a knowledgeable person, some students of similar age and interest and abilities, where there are some resources. What the distant education tradition has challenged in the paradigm sense is that it is possible to learn in the absence of a teacher, and in the absence of a school, and in the absence of immediately available resources such as a library. What does this mean for our e-learning and for these new network strategies? To bring about learning, we have to have some structure and curriculum theory and design, which we can do. Teachers may no longer be present, but they need to be there to guide students through the learning process, if for no other reason than efficiency and effectiveness. And the resources are available to us anywhere in the world through the web, and also through our ability to communicate with other people of similar interest or perhaps more knowledge than we might have on the particular thing that interests us. This is a fundamental challenge to the paradigm of education, and that's why so many traditional educators see what we're doing, either in the distance community or in the e-learning community, as either unreal or as a significant challenge to the way that the whole business of learning and teaching is presently undertaken.
Thank you very much, Andrew. That was very helpful.